Now, you can listen to Wine and Dine Radio while shopping at the grocery store or your neighborhood wine merchant. Wine and Dine Radio can be heard using your wireless internet on your cell phone. You're listening to iWineRadio. iWineRadio is a production of Food Tastes Better with Wine on the web at iWineRadio.com. Hey guys, I thank you for listening to iWineRadio, and we are still the only wine channel on iTunes Radio. If you go look under iTunes Radio icon and scroll down to News and Talk Directory, and it's listed alphabetically, click on that and the stream comes up immediately. iWineRadio.com, where you can find links to individual guests. And if anyone's interested in advertising or becoming an underwriter or sponsor, please contact us at iWineRadio.com. We really, really appreciate your support. The more support we get, the more conversations I can have with fascinating people around the world, including you. If you have a story to tell that you'd like to share on iWine Radio, go to iWineRadio.com and contact us, and we'll go from there.
Hello, my name is Ian Cauble, and I'm the U.S. brand ambassador for Krug Champagne.
Hi, my name is Heline. I'm the director of Krug in the U.S., having the chance to work for Krug for almost 10 years now. And if you want to know more about the House of Champagne that produces only prestige cuvée, please visit our website, krug.com.
Welcome to Wine and Dine Radio. I'm Lynn Creelo-Chamberlain.
Hi there, this is Andreas Larsson.
Hi, this is John Capon.
My name is Madhur Jaffrey.
Hi, my name is Heike Platter. I'm from the Alto Adige region, or Südtirol.
Hi, my name is Paul Dolan. I am absolutely passionate about growing organic and biodynamic fruit for our wines.
Hello, my name is Lorena Garcia.
Hello, my name is Fritz Maytag.
This is Joyce Locke. I'm the author of Foodie Fight.
Hi, this is Lydia Mandave, founder of 29 Cosmetics.
Cheers, this is Rob Barnett, CEO and founder of VinVillage.com, where wine lovers connect.
We've already had a couple conversations about the upcoming Naples Winter Wine Festival, and we learned that Krug Champagne is the title sponsor of Champagne for the event. And so one thing led to another, and thankfully I've never ever had a conversation with people of Krug Champagne. And so joining us today on Wine and Dine for the first half of the show is Carl Heline, who is the director of Krug, Maison Krug in the United States, and Ian Cauble, Master Sommelier, who is the Krug U.S. brand ambassador. We're going to have a lot of fun in talking about what's going on at Maison Krug. And they have such a long, long history. But, Carl, let me say, well, gentlemen, both, thank you so very much for joining us this week. But can I start by asking, Carl, as we were talking before we started recording, put Champagne Krug in perspective. In all the production of champagne, Krug is very, very small, but hugely significant.
Well, the size of Krug, if you look at everything we produce every year, it's the equivalent of 0.2% of the Champagne region. So it's. I like to take an example and say that it's usually less than the half of 1% of what Champagne produces. If you were talking to Olivier Krug, he will tell you that you need to align 600 bottles of champagne to find the first one of Krug.
Oh, that's a fantastic visual! Oh my gosh! So Ian, you open. Oh gosh, Ian, I remember, and this is a very personal story. I shouldn't be taking up time, but it's worth sharing because you, as a master sommelier, do a lot of tableside service.
Yes.
And after I was done at college studying winemaking, and I went to Ohio State University. I lived in Columbus, Ohio, and the very first Hyatt, opened in Columbus. And I convinced the food and beverage director to hire me as a sommelier. They'd never had a sommelier before. And I was a woman to boot, so I had, a couple bats against me. And I remember, and I did not have very much experience opening champagne bottles at all. And I remember the first bottle of champagne I opened was a disaster. It went all over the guest. I, wanted to put my head in the sand. But
Right.
I have since become very, very good at opening champagne because it's my favorite beverage in the world.
People get drenched all over the country every night in restaurants. So that's the problem with bubbles. Right? You have to control them. So.
Oh my gosh! And part of the of your job at you're going to be overseeing. Are you going to be present at the Naples Winter Wine Festival?
I will. Well, last year I was kind of the lead sommelier in charge of getting a lot of the different sommeliers together from around the country. We assembled a team of about 8 of the best sommeliers in America last year to orchestrate wine service. So last year I was very involved with Bruce Nichols, but this year me and Carl are going to be involved by doing some sommelier education for Krug and have our presence at different dinners where we'll be pouring Krug champagne. So I won't actually be working with the somm team this year.
Okay, so Carl. I was spending some time on the website last night for Krug, and do you like to? Is it best that we say Champagne Krug or Krug Champagne?
I think you should say Krug.
Just Krug, okay. Krug, okay. So, there are 6 different, and I didn't realize there were 6. Did I remember this correctly from the website? There are 6 different styles of Krug.
Yes. Yeah.
So everyone is familiar. Everyone who knows the name Krug is familiar with the Grande Cuvée. But talk to us about the different styles that are available. And you don't have to. If there's something that is not available in the United States, you don't have to leave that out.
No, everything is available in the United States.
Okay.
A lot of our collectors are actually American.
Okay.
We meet them all over the country. If you really want to dive into the 6 different Krug champagnes we have, because they're all very much connected, and they're all very much connected through the Grande Cuvée.
Okay.
Which makes Krug unique, because if you don't really know Krug, you believe that we are like any other champagne houses with what people will consider an entry level, which normally is a non-vintage.
Okay, yes, good point.
Krug is different. As we saw previously, the size of Krug, 0.2% of the Champagne region, and to understand really what Krug is about, you really need to reconnect with the founder, and telling you the truth, this reconnection happened for us in the last 2 or 3 years, thanks to a new president that we have. She's an amazing woman from Venezuela that is now the president of Krug, because when she arrived, she asked us were Eric Lebel, the cellar master for 15 years, Henry and Remy Krug, the 5th generation, Olivier Krug, of course, the 6th generation, and she asked us always why Krug is Krug, and she felt that we were maybe not so much connected with the origins, and we were doing things generations after generations just because it was transmitted through generations by the family.
Okay.
And she studied, which is very interesting, she studied the true history of the founder. And we found so many things about Joseph Krug, the founder, that help us to understand today what we do.
Oh,
and this is very interesting. Exactly. Without giving you a history lesson, because this is not the goal at all, we understand now why we are so different. And Krug is so different because the vision of Joseph Krug was to create champagnes that have never existed before because they were based on pleasure. He wanted to create the ultimate pleasure experience in champagne, because he did not understand why you basically have to wait some good years to drink good champagnes. Because it's true that if you look at other houses, the best champagne they do, which normally we call tête de cuvée or prestige cuvée, they're all vintages.
Yes.
They're all vintages. And he said, if I'm a luxury consumer and if I love everything that is about excellence in life, I should be able to drink it when I want to. And he started to think, And this is where comes really the foundations of Krug. And once we understood that, now we understand so much of the thing we're doing. And he basically said at that time, and we're in 1843, and don't forget, maybe you don't know that, but he was the number 2 of, at that time, the biggest champagne houses.
Oh, my.
So so he was German as his name.
Yes.
You can guess, but he had worked for 10 years in the Champagne region, and he was not satisfied with the propositions of the Champagne at that time, and he followed his dream of really creating a unique house that will produce only prestige cuvée. And today this is what we still do. Our 6 champagnes that we were talking earlier, they're all prestige cuvée. They all can age 30, 40, and 50 years if you are enough patient. But he created 2 wines at that time, 2 champagnes. The first one, that is the Grande Cuvée, that is a blend of 10 to 12 different vintages, more than 120 wines, the 3 grapes variety, that is reproduced every year using the best of the last 15 years to make a champagne. So overall, it's a process of 20 years. And if you don't know that, earlier you were saying, well, we're all familiar with Krug Grande Cuvée.
Right.
Yes, you're familiar with it, but how many people know that to make a single bottle of Grande Cuvée, it needs, in average, 22, 23, 24 years?
One must have very, very good sensory memory to be able to participate thoughtfully in that process every year.
Well, it's why we have 7 members of the tasting group, and 3 of them being from the family, because we still have today Remy and Henry from the 5th generation involved, and Olivier Krug, but above all, our cellar master, Eric Lebel, who's been here for 15 years now.
Carl, have you ever participated or at least stood on the, around and just watched them do that?
Yes, several times. It's a unique process. Why? Because when Joseph Krug decided to do basically the first luxury champagne house, because it didn't exist at this time, he understood one thing that was really important, is that if you want to create such champagnes, you need to know exactly the wines, then to blend them. And he created something that's still unique today, is that at Krug, we select about 250 plots, 250 parcels every year.
Yes.
But what we do is unique because from each plot, we make a wine.
And keep them all separate.
And keep them all separate until the blending, which normally happens 5 or 6 months later after the harvest. So all winter long.
Well, we're going to go to a short break here. When we come back, I have a question for Ian, and we're going to continue this conversation because this is, as you say, what really defines Krug. So we're going to go to a short break here. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Carl Heline, Director of Krug in the United States, and Ian Cauble, Master Sommelier, Krug U.S. Brand Ambassador on Wine and Dine. We're continuing our conversation with Ian Cauble, Master Sommelier, who is the Krug U.S. Brand Ambassador, and Carl Heline, who's the Director of Krug in the United States. And when we just finished off, Carl was talking to us about the fact that there are this process of blending begins 4 or 5 months after the harvest, and every single vineyard is vinified separately. But before you continue on that, Carl, can I ask Ian, have you ever watched that or kind of been in the room when they've been doing that, or are you going to be doing that this year?
Yeah, well, Maggie, the president of Krug, wants me to go in April. So it's a very complex process, and it's a very difficult one to really understand because the base wines to create champagne are very fresh. There's lots of acidity, there's lots of minerality, and you really have to have a very unique palate to be able to understand the way they're made. And usually, if you're doing this process, it's many, many generations of people that are involved. You know, Henry and Remy, they're 5th generation, and they're it's very important to have their expertise involved with the blending process. So it would definitely be a learning experience for me.
I would imagine that this would be way too private to film, but oh man, I would love to be a fly on the wall and watch that. I suppose it would be an interesting marketing promotion to be able to film a little bit of the process so people can see. But now, Carl, let me ask you this: what is her name? The woman who is the president now, or the director?
Margareth Henriquez. She's the CEO and president of Krug.
It is interesting that it took someone who was outside of the family to come in with that and see that there was a need for redefining and going back to the roots.
Well, the need at first was not for Krug. The need was for her.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Exactly, and because she's a very smart person, and she wants to understand everything, and she has an attention to details that is unseen, and she was asking, and sometimes she could feel that we were doing things just because we were doing it for 2, 3, or 4 generations, and she said that must have a reason, because you do things at Krug that are completely different from other champagne houses, so why do we do that? And coming back to the history, as we were sharing earlier, but it makes sense, because Joseph Krug wanted to create the first luxury champagne house because he wanted to give his consumers every year the best, regardless of the harvest.
Can I ask you, because many people are probably not aware of the fact that one of the differences about Krug is that the wines are fermented, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the wines are fermented in oak barrel, not in stainless steel tanks.
So they are fermented in very small oak cask for one single reason, is the capacity, the ability that it gives us to do the first fermentation of those plots separately. So the oak cask for us, it's a small contents to be able to ferment all the plots separately. So we're not looking at all for the taste of oak, and this is important because our casks are usually 20, 25, 30, 35 years old.
So originally this was kind of a logistic sort of decision.
Well, originally, don't forget that everyone was doing the first fermentation in oak cask.
Oh, I didn't know that. Not concrete tanks or something, but they were using oak. Okay.
No, the stainless steel tanks arrived only in the 60s.
Yeah.
And everyone moved to big stainless steel tanks because they are blending all those plots together to create different blends of Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier. For us, we believe that we should keep the individuality of each plot and give the chance of that plot to become a wine. So then, a few months later, after the harvest, we're usually in January, February, and March, we can taste all those plots separately with the 7 people we were talking earlier. It's more than 7,000 tastings at the end every year.
Ian, from your perspective as Master Sommelier, to give a little bit of insight as to how the fact that the wines are vinified in oak greatly, really, compared to stainless steel, affects the final product.
Well, yeah, at the initial fermentation, the wine will only spend about 90 days of its life in oak. And at this point, the wine will have a brief contact with oxygen because that's very important. Early on in the life of a wine is to have a brief contact with oxygen because it almost protects the wine for its entire life.
Exactly.
But the wine will only spend 90 days of its life in actual oak barrels. After that, we'll go to stainless steel. And I think what's most unique is that every single wine will be blind tasted each month, January, February, March, and April. So we have a unique understanding of the personality of each single vineyard. And I think that's something so unique that no other house in Champagne blind tastes each single plot separately. And I think that's the most unique part about the winemaking process that I've seen since I became part of Krug Champagne.
Carl, when I was looking on the website, and there are these wonderful videos up, and it shows all the different tanks. It was in a reference of all the different reserve wines that are used for blending. And it occurred to me this question of how are the wines kept for 10, 15, 20 years in reserve, are they finished with carbon dioxide or argon or nitrogen or something on top to keep the wines from oxidizing?
No, I think they're left exactly where they are.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But again, coming to what Ian was saying, because when the wines are born into oakwood barrels, they are already in contact with the oxygens. It explains so many things about Krug. It explains why we usually need more times. And I mean, right now we're on the vintage 98 and 2000. So it's 12 to 13 years for the youngest. It's 14 to 15 years for 98. Other champagne vintages are already on 2004 and 5. It's not because we have more time, it's because our wines need more time. But that will also give them the extreme longevity they had. I was reading yesterday that someone who just had Krug 1926 of one of his best wine of last year. This is, I won't tell you it's very common, because of course those bottles are extremely rare.
Yes.
But what is very common is to hear someone that says, I found these bottles of Krug 47, of Krug 69, of Krug, and they're always fresh. Because of the way they were born and because of the extreme selections we have at first to select those plots.
Okay, explain when you say the word. I understand what you're saying, but not everybody will understand. When you use the word fresh, what do you mean?
What is important, I mean, the acidity that is in a wine will give the freshness, will help him in the time, if you want to. Acidity sounds like a bad word. It's actually very necessary in a wine. When you open a bottle of Krug that is 40 or 50 years, the first nose that you have is that the wine still has its backbone. The wine is still present in the glass. I think in English you have this expression, over the hill.
Yes.
Well, this is exactly the opposite of usually what Krug gives you. It gives you the feeling that this wine, it's still going and is still present and I have lost nothing. And that comes to me from the freshness.
Okay, Ian, I didn't write down the exact quote, but on the website there is something about the fact that for Krug, time is the essential. Time is what makes Krug. It's not a negative thing, it's a positive thing.
Right.
And for some people, there's all this cliche that this bottle of Liebfraumilch or a white Zinfandel that they got 15 or 20 years ago, oh, it's wonderful. And for most wines, that's not the case. But for Krug, it is, if it's stored correctly. Yeah?
Correct. Well, not all wine is designed to age. White Zinfandel you should be probably aging in your trunk on the way home. But Krug is something so special because it takes 22 years to make a bottle of Grande Cuvée. But when that wine is released, it can be drank, but the wine can be aged for another 50 years. So some wines, depending, again, going back to that acidity and freshness is basically the most important thing when you age a wine is how it's made. If you make it with fresh acidity and you take time and care in crafting something with excellence, it can be aged for a long time if you store it correctly. But if you're taking, for example, something like a very high alcohol Pinot Noir from California, these wines will not age for more than 5 or 6 years because, for one, they don't have the acidity and they're born with too much fruit where that fruit just decomposes and really becomes a very dull wine. So Krug is very special because, for one, even a vintage will take us 10 years to release. After the champagne is actually created, the wine will be laid down for 10 years until it's prepared to receive its final cork. And then to that point, the wine can live up to 60, 70, 80 more years. I've heard of wines going back to 1915 recently that we opened at the house that were amazing, and they tasted like something that was from the 60s. That
must have been a really cool experience.
Aging is a big question, and it has been especially recently because some of our Krug lovers, as they call themselves. We don't even have to call themselves like this. They do. Some of them like to age their Grande Cuvée, for example.
Yeah.
And one thing that they have been asking for a while is, as there is no vintage on it, no year, they could not recognize if that bottle had left the House of Krug a year or 2 years ago, or 10 or 15 years ago. And I know that Maggie has been working on it, and now for the last year and a half, we have a code. It's the Krug ID, like identification, and it's on the back of your bottle of Grande Cuvée, of vintage or rosé. And if you plug that number into the Krug.com website, it will give you exactly the recipe, all the wines that are in it, and all the information you want about it.
Oh, that is so clever of you. I'm so sorry that we're out of time. We'll have to do this again. Carl, Heline, and Ian Cauble, thank you for joining us today on Wine and Dine.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Merci.
Now you can listen to Wine and Dine Radio while shopping at the grocery store or your neighborhood wine merchant. Wine and Dine Radio can be heard using your wireless internet on your cell phone. You're listening to iWineRadio. iWineRadio is a production of Food Tastes Better with Wine, on the web at iWineRadio.com. Hey guys, I thank you for listening to iWineRadio, and we are still the only wine channel on iTunes Radio. If you go look under iTunes radio icon and scroll down to News and Talk Directory, and it's listed alphabetically, click on that and the stream comes up immediately. iWineRadio.com, where you can find links to individual guests. And if anyone's interested in advertising or becoming an underwriter or sponsor, please contact us at iWineRadio.com. We really, really appreciate your support. The more support we get, the more conversations I can have with fascinating people around the world, including you. If you have a story to tell that you'd like to share on iWineRadio, go to iWineRadio.com and contact us, and we'll go from there.